Hey, what's up everyone? Today I'm going to teach you how I went about making a truly Dark Brettonian using some cheesecloth. So we're going to start off with our Varangard model here, and we're going to leave the rider off, and we're going to try and leave a lot of the detail off as well. As you see, the spikes specifically on this ice armored guy, I've left off the Varangard on the right. That's just going to get in the way of the cheesecloth, and also the measuring. Speaking of which, we're going to start off by using a tape measure and taking some measurements of the rump of the horse, the neck, the chest slash front legs, and the head. I'm going to focus on the back rump here. So we take those measurements and then we make a sort of half circle shape. Once we cut this out, this is going to be draped over the back of the horse. So once you've made this shape on a piece of paper, I just used standard printer paper, you're going to cut it out with a pair of scissors, and then you're going to drape it over the back of the horse and get a comparison. You're trying to see if the size is generally right. Something to keep in mind though, when you are draping this over, it'll probably look too big, but keep in mind that when we use the cheesecloth, it's going to be wet, it's going to cling closer to the surface, and you're going to have folds, so it's not going to be quite so big as this piece of paper. This is more of a template. So again, I make these shapes out for the neck and chest as well. I'll have a still to show you the exact shapes later on the video, just because it's kind of, I don't know how to explain what shape this is, but yeah, I'll make sure to leave a picture of those up. Yeah, so you're going to complete this, you're going to follow the same steps as you did with the rump for the chest, neck, and head. I also went ahead and made a cloak for the rider, and you're going to follow the same steps there. So I believe this cloth is called a caparison. I thought it was called barding, but I think barding is the armor. So I think caparison is the cloth part. Maybe someone can explain exactly the difference. I guess it's not that important ultimately. Okay, so here are the shapes. Just, okay, there we go. Feel free to freeze frame. Okay, so once you get those shapes, you're going to cut out cheesecloth using those pieces of paper as a template, and then you're going to soak these in water and drape them over. So it doesn't look wet here, but it's actually quite saturated with water. You'll notice that this cheesecloth clings to the shape a bit better, right? So it looks much better than the paper does in terms of size and shape. While this is wet, you do not want to let this dry. Oh yeah, don't forget to make an eye hole. The horse has to see. While the cheesecloth is still wet, you're going to mix up some PVA glue, and you're going to soak the cheesecloth with that mixture of PVA glue and water. I don't have an exact ratio. I would say 50-50 is pretty close, but you're going to completely saturate the cloth. This will make the cheesecloth hardened and make it easier to paint on, and you know, it'll make it a more rigid structure. When you're choosing cheesecloth, the higher the thread count, the better. Think of this as like a scale thing, right? The smaller the higher the thread count, the finer the thread, which matches better with the scale of the models we're working on. If the thread count isn't super high, it'll look very loose. If you haven't already liked the video, we'd appreciate it. It massively helps us out. Once it's dry, you're going to hit it with a white primer. I used a spray can primer in this case. Any will do, but I just used one from my hardware store. Excuse me, hardware store. Then we're going to use Citadel Flesh Tears Red. This is a contrast paint, and you're going to cover all of the cloth with this. This is a pretty dark red with maybe a little bit of purple in it. Cover the entire model. Same rules apply as when you're applying contrast paints to anything else. Try not to let it pool too heavily in any one area. Because of the texture, this cheesecloth really absorbs the contrast paint quite well. I felt it was pretty easy to work with, as opposed to bare plastic or primed plastic. You'll notice I also painted the armor red. Ignore that, we're going to change that up later. Then you're going to grab a dry brush and dry brush Citadel Mephiston Red heavily, and then Vallejo Game Color Bloody Red a little bit lighter. These two reds kind of go up in value compared to the Flesh Tears Red, which is quite dark. The Mephiston Red is a good mid-tone, and then the Bloody Red is a good highlight. So I try to focus it on the sharpest folds and any upward-facing surfaces like the top of the head. Now, this is Bretonnia, and I was looking at some old Bretonnian art. So we're going to paint some stripes using Pro Acryl Dark Blue, but first we're going to start with, we're going to build a border around the bottom edge of the caparison. Again, I think that's what it's called, caparison, or I think barding is the armor. I'm not exactly sure. So maybe someone can explain the difference to me. Yeah, so we're just going to paint some stripes up. It's all freehand, it's not exact. If I could go back and redo it, I probably would have been a bit more exact, but at this point I was just kind of experimenting. This is all experimental. I wasn't even sure if I was going to turn this into a tutorial or not. Then we're going to build a black border around the cloak here on the rider. I felt like there wasn't enough separation between the two. It was getting very, looking very blended together. So I wanted to build a barrier there. And also felt like it needed to be a little bit darker. So I make a 1-to-1 equal parts mix of Nuln Oil, Druchii Violet or Druchii Violet, and a contrast medium in this case, but you should probably use Lamine medium because these are shades. It's fine if you don't though. Anyway, I put this on the cloak just to darken it down a bit more so we can get a bit more of that separation between the rider. Now I'd mentioned that I painted the armor red. You can ignore that. I wasn't happy with how it looked. So I black it out in Vallejo model color black. This is so that later when we apply metallics, metallics tend to work better over black. All right, now we're gonna come back. Now that Pro Acryl Dark Blue is dry, we're gonna do a 50-50 mix or 1-to-1 mix with Teclis Blue, and we're just gonna give a little bit of highlighting here on the blue stripes. So you can paint the armor however you want, but I was looking at old Bretonnian armor, and it's like, you gotta do it silver. It just didn't look quite right when it was red, even though it felt very cornate. Oh, right, and then we're gonna grab Vallejo Game Color Gory Red, and we're going to dry brush the cloak, because it also needs some highlighting as well, similar to the cheesecloth. We do want to bring out some of the folds on that. Gory Red is not quite as bright as the Mephiston and Bloody Red that we did on the caparison. Alright, so now we're going to grab Harvest Brown. We're going to do some horns here. Horns and bone. So MSP Harvest Brown, we're going to thin it down to like a glaze or shade consistency. And we're going to just stipple it on. That's basically stabbing. We're going to build up this Harvest Brown in layers on the horns, and he has a skull here. Any other areas you want to paint bone, you want to do this as well. If you have some, maybe you chose a different helmet. Then we're going to grab MSP Harvest Brown and Iraqi Sand, do a 1-to-1 mix, and again we're going to, sorry it's out of focus here, I was getting too close to the camera, stipple it on as well, focusing on the higher areas, leaving that MSP Harvest Brown in the shadows. And then we're going to use just Iraqi Sand, again, still a glaze consistency, very thin, and we're just going to stipple it on the highlights of the horns here. Think of this as like the areas that are upward facing areas where light would reflect if a light was directly above. Then we're going to unify all of those colors with a Skeleton Horde contrast paint. This is just a nice bone color contrast. It kind of, again, unifies those three layers we did. Once that's dry, you're going to apply an ultra matte varnish. I used AK to get rid of that satin varnish that's left over by the contrast paints. Then we're going to jump in with Vallejo Model Color Steel, very silvery, nice color for all the metal armor we're going to be painting. And then we're going to keep it simple. You're just going to grab Vallejo Metal Color Chrome and highlight using a lamp directly from above as a guide for where your highlights are going to be placed. And this is a very shiny silver, and it looks very Bretonnia to me, so I felt like it was appropriate. That should leave you with something like this. Just about, we're getting close to finished here. But we want some separation between these metal plates. There's some trim and some lines there. So we're going to grab Tamiya Panel Liner Black, and we're just going to dip this into all of the panels, as the name suggests. You don't have to use Tamiya Panel Liner. You can use a brush and, Nuln Oil or a thinned down black as you want, but this flows really easily, so it was the easiest for me to use. Now you might notice that our rider here is not really holding on to anything, so grab some 23mm jeweler's chain, because it's pretty close to the chain that he's holding in his left hand. When I turn the model around, you'll see he's kind of holding on some chain. I grab this chain and I cut one of the links, and I put both half of those links, I kind of hook them in to the cloth there to give it, the cloth somewhere to go, and then hook the rest of the chain, after measuring it out, into that hook that is in the mouth area. With a little bit of glue applied here with a little bit of brass rod, I put some glue in his hand on the left side, and then I wrap around the chain and insert that chain link into his hand so it looks like he's holding it. So the reason I went with this 23mm chain is that it's about as close as I could get to the chain that is already modeled onto the model. If you look in his left hand here, his reins are made out of chain, so I use this to kind of, make up for the fact that the reins that were already there are covered by cheesecloth. Once you've done it with this side, you're going to do it with the other side, and that should leave you with this. And here is our best manifestation of the Dark Brettonian Army so far. I mean, this guy looks straight up like Chaos Bretonnia. It's pretty much the perfect example of what I was going for. That being said, I do have some mixed feelings about it. I'm not 100% in love with how the caparison came out. This probably comes from the fact that I wasn't sure if I was going for more of a Brettonian Knight or like Scarecrow from Batman, kind of look. Having that decided from the get-go probably would have resulted in a better, result. That being said, definitely was a trust the process type of situation with this. I was not happy with it up until the very end. Anyway, I'll close this out for today. If you enjoyed this tutorial, if you enjoyed this video, we'd appreciate any support you can give. And until next time, I'll see you guys around. Bye-bye.